Thanks for joining us for another episode of Chat United. We're so excited to have with us today John Toler from our local recovery community. We think he's got a profound and really amazing story to share with us today. So we're excited to just jump into the conversation. So John, thanks for joining the podcast. We're amateur podcasters here, so thanks for coming with your grace and tolerance. And we've sort of had a, before the podcast as we've been talking here, but the way that you've entered our orbit here at United Way is that you were a part of a local recovery program here in Parkersburg, and you were part of our Downtown Ambassador program. You were, kind of on the fringe of the program, moving through when that was starting, but that's how we first met you. And so it's been interesting to follow your journey and hear your story. For us, for folks that might not know, the Downtown Ambassador program is a community volunteer program, but we've really linked up with the Recovery Point in Parkersburg, and so we had the opportunity for folks from your facility to come into our office, and we had the chance to get to know them really on a personal level and really make some friendships and relationships that have been long lasting for us. And you were one of those guys that when we said, let's talk about recovery in the community, Sarah pulled your name right up out of that hat and said, let's talk to John Toler. So let's talk. Let's go all the way back to. Let's start in the middle. Let's just start in the middle of the book, and then we'll just go beginning and end, and with no just whimsical. So let's talk about when you first came to Recovery Point Parkersburg. Let's start at that point, and tell me how long ago that was.
I come to Recovery Point it was 17 months ago. I was transferred from the Huntington facility, and then I started working the program, and then it's a funny thing because it actually took me 15 months to complete the program, and what they call I had a restart and 9 detox stints because I was very stubborn and wanted things my way, and that's just not the way the program's run.
So share for us, for someone in our audience who doesn't know what a restart means at Recovery Point. Let's share with them.
Okay, so when you come into Recovery Point's program, there's certain stages of the program that you work through. Like first off, if you're coming off the streets and you're detoxing from some kind of drugs or whatever, we have a detox unit. And then after you make it out of there, you go to what they call OTS 1, and that's off the streets 1. I mean, that's where you start going to meetings and you just attend classes. And that's that takes about 3 months to get through before you start into OTS 2. And it's kind of like OTS 1. You still have meetings that you have to go to, classes to attend, but you take on more responsibilities within the building as like cooking in the kitchen or different job titles. Okay. After this, you go to phase 1, and that's where you kind of start. We practice the steps of Alcoholics Anonymous there. So we start the step work in phase 1, and phase 1, after going through all 12 steps of the Alcoholics Anonymous steps, and that's like 9 months. To get through. After you complete phase 1, I mean, like when we have issues, it's kind of like consequences, like doing things that we know that we're not supposed to do. You claim issues. We have on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, we have a phase community, and that's where we all sit in a circle and give suggestions on how the behavior should be dealt with. And normally it's writings and actions done throughout the building.
When you guys used to come in our office and you talk about, Bob had issues this week or John had, 7 issues, we were kind of alarmed. We were alarmed, right, because we thought, being outside of the recovery community, your issues must be things like there had been a substance in the building, or there had been a backsliding to that use. Mm-hmm. And then we learned very quickly, so we were alarmed that Bob could have 7 issues. We learned quickly that issues could be something just what to us felt very simple. It was violating respect issues. It was violating,
right.
And so it could be really minor things like not having a pen in a meeting, but just not. And we had the ability and the chance to get the glimpse that in that program you really did break down to the basic level of following rules, following protocols, being in someone else's structure. And so it was amazing to sit on the outside of that and understand when you talk about rebuilding someone, you really went back to a basic granular level.
And so I was in phase 1, and I was still doing what I wanted to do, catching issues and going to, we'll call it recovery focus because detox sounds like a relapse.
Okay.
But it's just where your program's on freeze for 2 weeks, and then you write contracts and things like that. But I was on my 4th step, which is kind of like a major part in a shift in the lives of anyone who's working the steps. That's when you take a really good, deep, hard look at everything you've ever done in your life. So I was dealing with like frustrations with that, but I was still getting in trouble, and I just couldn't get right. So I got to the point where, like, you know what, you can't act right, we're going to restart you. So I was hit with a OTS 1 restart, so I had to start the entire program over again. And that's kind of the, like, how far that goes. Like, there's always that worse, like, if not a restart, could be discharge. You know what I'm saying?
So let me ask you, and we agreed before that you said everything's fair game and on the table, so it feels like an invasive question, but I don't know the answer to this about you. Were you here of your own free will? Were you in the program? So when you were forced to do the restart, could you have walked away from the program? Or what would that have looked like for you?
At that time, no.
Okay. So you were under a court order to be in the... Okay.
Yeah, I had caught charges in Georgia a few years back that landed me with 2 felonies for possession of meth and possession of marijuana or heroin. And because I didn't have nowhere to parole out down there, they gave me a furlough and sent me back to West Virginia to serve my probation time here.
And you were from West Virginia, right?
Yeah, originally from Logan County.
Okay. Okay.
So after coming to a recovery point before and then leaving, going out and relapsing multiple times again, it was like finally you're either going to do this or you're going to prison.
So when Recovery Point looks at you and gives you the restart, if you didn't restart, you're going back to jail.
Yeah.
And you know that.
Yeah. So it's kind of like acceptance is a big thing there. Love and tolerance of others is our code, right? We're like coming down to like the meat of it. We got to find our part in every action that we do, regardless if it's actions that like we want to like justify on ourselves on why we done something, or if it's just like we were just acting out. Like I was completely frustrated because I was already 6 months into the program. I was like, that's a long time for me. You know what I'm saying? So then to be hit with the restart, I was devastated. And the actions that followed after being told that I was getting restart probably could have been a justified discharge, because I probably said some choice words that I shouldn't have said to them.
And if they chose to discharge you, that's it. It's now out of your hands, and you go back to prison.
Yeah.
Back in the system.
Yeah. So I had to get to a point where eventually, and to be honest, like I was probably not working the steps to the best of my ability. You know, I was there because I had to be there, not because I wanted to. But in that restart, something changed. Something clicked in my mind. Like, and that was the point to where it was like, they're tired of dealing with me. You know what I'm saying? Like, after my restart, of course, I still like caught issues and went to recovery focus or detox. You know, but like it was much less and a lot fewer than what it was before the restart. Because I had to get to a point in my mind that if I don't get this, I'm going to die. And they offered me anything and everything that I needed to be able to make this journey successful, as long as I wanted to do it.
So you were in Recovery Point before, and you left, and at that point you were able to leave of your own free will.
Because I manipulated the system.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
An incident happened when me and one of the guys was wrestling upstairs, and one of the staff members at the time had made an inappropriate comment and a threatened discharge. And at the time, the probation officer that I had, I took it to him, and it was just enough to get me out the door.
And you knew that.
And I knew that, and I used that because at that time I knew that I wasn't done getting high. I was having too much fun.
So you're out of the system. I mean, you're out of recovery point.
Yep.
You're back out on the street on probation.
Yep.
And you go back to using.
Yep.
Were you at recovery point in Huntington at that point?
Yeah.
So what triggered the decision to bring you to recovery point in Parkersburg? Is it where there was an open bed? Is that?
See, what happened is recovery point in Huntington is a awesome facility, as well as Parkersburg, and I'm sure it's the other facilities. But what happened there was there was a seed plant. We studied the book of Alcoholics Anonymous. We done the meetings. Excuse me. We the fellowship and the brotherhood that's in this program is absolutely phenomenal. So I knew that if I ever got to a place to where I was like, okay, throwing in the rag, I'm done. Recovery point was where I was going to be, was what was going to change my life. But it was only a matter of if I'd make it back. Wasn't a guarantee.
Okay. So second time in, you landed in Parkersburg.
Second time in, I landed in Huntington.
Okay.
Right, but then I was soon transferred to Parkersburg.
Okay. Okay. So, if you don't mind,
mm-hmm.
And I think it's such an important story to tell us. It kind of started in the middle, like there you were.
Yeah.
Well, let's go back.
I never remember a time that my parents were together as a child. I remember there were times that I was with my mother, and then times I was with my father, or times I was with my grandma or an aunt. You know what I'm saying? There was never no sturdy stability there. You know what I'm saying? That foundation was never solid. What I do have remembrance of is, being abused by step parents, you know what I'm saying, or things like that, or, excuse me, can you get some water? Being abused by step parents, or being raped when I was 8 years old. I always felt like,
by, and I'm going to interject and ask,
sure.
Family member? Someone that was a trusted?
He was what I guess at the time considered a trusted friend.
Okay.
Sorry. He was a few years older than I was. And someone that I never expected would ever,
And you were 8.
I was 8. Yeah.
Was that something your family knew about at the time? Was it something you told at 8, or something you carried for a long time?
I carried it for as long as I could. That's not a conversation. Having the kind of parents that I had, not out of fear of myself or them, but not having them in my life again. You know what I'm saying? Because granted, they were very protective, but at the same time, they suffered with drug and alcoholism as well. And I didn't want to fear, I didn't have them in my life as much as I wanted, so to have them completely taken away from me was out of the question.
At 8, did you recognize that there was a substance use problem around you?
No. But years coming up,
okay.
Some things that you see never change. You know what I'm saying? A lot of the behaviors, a lot of the things that maybe they hid well at a younger age, maybe you start paying more attention, or you start recognizing these things and coming up into oh, well, I know what that is. You know what I'm saying? It was never blatantly put in front of me, but...
When you were old enough to recognize it, did you then realize it had always been there?
Absolutely. Okay. Yeah. So, I was never bullied in school. I was probably the one who, was never in any particular clique, but went to all of them. You know what I'm saying? I was always I don't know. don't want to say life of the party, but I definitely wasn't a buzzkill. You know what I'm saying? But like, I mean, it got to the point where, I don't know, like I became very good at hiding, uh, like things that I was going through in life because I didn't want to burden my parents or feel like I was that one kid who, you know, the black sheep. Which ultimately, in years to come, like, here I am, but.
That's self-labeled though. So you learned early to hide that trauma though. I mean, because now as an adult you look back and I mean we know so much about what that trauma can mean in early childhood and why that can be a trigger for the path that then came for you. But you learned to you just compartmentalized it.
For the what I would like to say is the longest time, but it became such a problem for me that it was starting to affect my schoolwork and my all these things because I knew that it was that because it was the only thing that I could think of. You know what I'm saying? Like it was the only thing that kept replaying in my mind, and so what I done was I tried to let certain people in. You know what I'm saying? Like I was scared to death that it would happen again, but I wanted friends. Like I wanted to trust people again. Like so I had those one or two good friends that would that I could talk to. You know what I'm saying? Like best friends coming up through school.
So you're the guy who floated everybody's social group, but just on a surface level.
Yeah.
Just for fun.
Yeah. And then I eventually started on the Town of Man Volunteer Fire Department, where I'd gotten close with the guy who actually introduced me to the fire department. And me and his wife was talking about it one day because I thought she was a trusted friend. But no sooner, like, we lived in a apartment complex, right? So she lived on one side and me and my mom lived on the other. But I was talking about it to her one day, and it was like no sooner than I went out the door, like, to go, like, not towards my house, right? Like, she went out the door and went directly and told my mother.
You're how old at that time, John?
17.
Okay.
17 when she found out. And I remember having conversations with her talking about how she seen blood, things like that in my laundry or things like that. But it was never, looked into or whatever it is,
Wow.
So, and with the abuse, at the age of 18, I finally moved out of my mother's place and got my own. And that's when, like, I knew that I could do whatever I wanted to. So the drinking came along. It started with just smoking pot and then pills, and then synthetics, and then eventually meth and heroin.
What is the time frame of the progression from I'm 18, I have my own place, and now I'm medicating? Now we essentially know where that was started. What was the progression from starting to drink underage to synthetics to meth to heroin? I mean, what was that time progression like?
Well, I drank it as a underage, right? Because like I knew that I could.
Yeah.
Not that like not it. The conversation would be like, "Hey, mom, I'm going to party with the friends. In the school parking lot or wherever, on the mountain or wherever." But like, I'm sure she wasn't ignorant.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
How old do you think when you started drinking recreationally?
No.
Because you couldn't.
I know the pot started around 13
Okay.
because my brother was. Doesn't matter.
But it was accessible.
Right.
Okay.
Absolutely. So drinking, Lord, 16, 17.
So you were smoking marijuana
Yeah.
before you were drinking alcohol.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Which is not the perception that I'm going to guess most of the people in our audience would guess.
Probably not.
I mean, we have these preconceived notions of
Sure.
What's the gateway to. So by the time you're 18, you have your own place. So then the step up to the next level of drugs came pretty quickly.
Yeah. I worked in a bar. I worked at one bar. It's funny because the way that the Town of Man is set up, like, there's a bar on one side of the road that I worked at, and then directly across the street is another bar. So I couldn't get drunk at the bar that I was working at, obviously. So when I'd clock out, I'd go to the
Across
other
the
bar.
street.
Yeah,
Okay.
right. So obviously in bars, like, you're going to find anything.
Sure.
So it started out with pills, and it just progressed. You know, like when I turned 18 and got my own place, like it wasn't no time that I went buck wild, because Mama wasn't there to, excuse me, Mama wasn't there to tell me that I couldn't, or Mama, you know, like,
Had you finished school at that point? Did you finish high school?
no.
Okay.
I started a relationship when I was 17 years old, and it was influenced that I just dropped out of high school, and then um, go directly after and start my GED,
Okay.
which I had big hopes for. You know what I'm saying? Like it's hard not having a GED and then, you know, finding work, especially in a small town.
Sure.
But after starting drugs, like all that went out the window. Like I was showing up to my GED classes stoned, or being sent out of there because I was drunk. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
it's just life became really unmanageable.
So the
really
pursuit of that just didn't. But you're not. When does the legal trouble start? Well, and let me back up. So what comes first? Is it the fear crisis that something horrific is going to happen to your life, or did it go down the disastrous legal path first?
Well, underage public intox
Okay.
was good as a start, and then overdoses at the age of 18, because I had my own place. Like I was under no supervision, so.
So the life-threatening things happened before you even had a heavy level of legal trouble.
Absolutely.
From the usage.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I was, like I said, at first it started, or was getting started into pills, and then, like, I would like to call it a freak overdose, because it was someone gave me something and I just took it. So, I don't know. It's just weird how things transpire so quickly, because like one's never enough. You know what I'm saying? Like, so, like, if I'm drinking, then I gotta be smoking, and if I'm smoking, I gotta be doing pills and all these other things that everything leads to.
In such a tiny little rural community, and I'm familiar with Logan County, accessibility difficult?
Not for me. Like I said, coming up through school, like I was that
You were the
everybody.
guy.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I got along with everyone, and then it only takes one or two to know your name.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying? Because then, like, say I had one drug dealer, right? Well, if this drug dealer doesn't have anything, he's probably not a good drug dealer. One, and two, he's going to be able to refer me to someone else, because I'm going to get what I want.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? So, like, it doesn't take long to find the circle or the
Even in that tiny little community.
right.
Most accessible prevalent drug in a community like that.
Right now.
How about then and now?
Okay.
Because I think it's not always what people think in
Right.
our state.
Sure. Well, at that time, Roxy 30s and Roxy 15s, Xanax,
Okay.
you know, things like that was really big. But now,
So pills were super accessible
yes,
at that time.
yeah, without a doubt, they were going to the doctors, you know, like.
Because that's backing us up 6-7 years. So yeah, more accessible.
Today, unfortunately, the meth and the heroin has taken over a lot of small towns like that.
Yeah.
I know this is going to sound crazy, but like I was coming, you know how you come down the hill into the town of Man?
Yeah,
I was coming down there one day on a home pass. My nose is itching. One day on a home pass, and it was like, it's crazy. Like, again, I was not high at this time, I swear. I was coming home from recovery point on a home pass. But it was like, I was sitting there, but in my mind, I went to a completely different place. But it was like I was sit up on a cliff overlooking the town, like Buffalo Creek, Huff Creek. I could see it all. And then all of a sudden, like, it all went up in a pile of smoke. It was just like a forced fire. What was in my mind was like just how fast that heroin and meth has destroyed that place. And it sucks because these are people who like when I was 18, you know what I'm saying, we may consider those the old heads, you know what I'm saying, but now like in this day and age, like these the people who's doing it now are the people that you went to school with. These are the people who you built connections with, and it's sad to see like people who are like 30 pounds underweight. You know, like I've never in my life, even when I was 18, seen homeless people in Man, West Virginia. Never. But this last time that I go back, I see people carrying bags and hanging, you know, like laid up against old grocery stores that have been shut down.
And in those rural communities, we don't have the services in place, so it's a really unanswered unmet need.
Yeah.
So you're 18. It's still party time. There's been a couple little slaps on the wrist.
Yeah.
Where does the trouble set in? Where does the trouble that lands you in Georgia with felonies, with a rap sheet that's growing? How does that transpire from Man, West Virginia?
So, like I told you, when I was 18 years, or when I was 17, I started this relationship. It was the relationship that I was in. Wasn't because I felt any type of way about this particular person. It was I was young. There was money. There was new clothes, new shoes, new cars, new phones, credit cards, anything that looked good to a 17-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
So, of course, I wanted to jump headfirst into it, and that's exactly what I've done. So over the course of the next few years, full-blown addiction sets in, and I was enabled more than anything. If Mama wouldn't, the other person would. You know what I'm saying? So it was. I become very a whole lot more rebellious into because like if you can't, then I can't, and watch me kind of thing. So when the money was cut out, when it was caught on to what I was doing, like after all the lying, the cheating, the stealing, the manipulating, the everything that I thought I was good at, you know, when everything was caught on to, it was like this isn't the life that you wanted when you were 17. And I'm not going to supply it anymore. So I done what I knew that I had to do.
Was that person in the relationship also a user?
Fortunately not.
Okay.
Never been addicted to anything.
Okay.
But sometimes I think that out of the years of addiction that one's put through with an addict, I think it's sometimes worse to be with one than to actually be one. Because over the course of the 8 years of this relationship that recently, or this marriage that's recently was finally divorced and finalized, never deserved any of the things that was ever done. Like, under no circumstances will I ever tell you that the things that I've done in addiction, in active addiction, that I was proud of. Because to think that the person who floated around to each group in school, you know, the person who people would come to when they needed help, when they needed food, when they needed somebody to talk to, that person can be or can do all the things that I done to this individual in active addiction. So what I done was I made this person believe a lie for years until nothing more was, until I felt like there was nothing more that this other person could offer. So after being cut off from, my money supply, you know what I'm saying? Like I started going out and I started doing things that I knew that I wasn't supposed to do, but I was the baddest of them all. I could get away with it, and I did for time. stealing, and all those things that I was doing to him, I applied on other people's lives. Like I'd get close to you just to tear you down. Like I'm going to get close to you so I can just close enough to get in your house to where you trust me just enough to turn your back, and I'm going to get you. I'll never be proud of some of the things that I've done to get drugs or money, but that was the very lifestyle that I came to live. Like I'll never be proud of holding a gun to people's head, and taking their money or their drugs. That's not the kind of lifestyle that any one person wants to live. But I can guarantee you that none of us woke up one day with the intention on becoming a drug addict or an alcoholic. I started using because I didn't want to deal with the things that I was feeling. The depression got too great. The only thoughts of suicide become too much for me to be able to handle on my own. And I knew that because when I would go out and party with friends, drugs and alcohol took all that stuff away. The drugs and alcohol worked until it didn't.
Do you think when you think about manipulating those people and you say just getting close enough to get what you need, is there a moment where that's about the power and the manipulation, or is it all just a means to the end to get the money, to get the drugs, to get is it feeding the lifestyle, is it feeding the habit, or is it both?
It's absolutely both.
Okay.
The habit was like, the habit became a way of life because okay. I knew what I had to do. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you had it and I wanted it, I was going to get it one way or the other. And I didn't care what I had to do to get it. And that's the kind of lifestyle that I wished. I'll never say that I'm proud that I lived, but like we talked about earlier, is experience. Like, maybe that's not an experience that I wanted, but because I have that experience, my only goal is to be able to reach out to those people who live that same lifestyle.
So, John, what makes it stop? Because to hear you share that, and I'm sitting here, seeing just a sliver of it, it feels like you had control. In your mind, you had control. I mean, where does it stop? What made it stop? Was it a legal intervention? Was it legal trouble? Was it an OD scare? Like, what was the moment where you first pivoted towards, I think I can't keep doing this? Because sometimes the highs were really great, and you were seeing what you wanted, and you were taking what you wanted, and you were feeding the habit. So what's the first moment where you think something has to change? Even though maybe it didn't change in that moment. What was the first moment where you said something has to change?
I remember multiple overdoses where I would come to one particular overdose, like that rings very vivid in my mind to this day, was that I was left in a car in the middle of summer with the windows rolled up, and I had I don't know how long that I was there, but when I came to, they had hit me with Narcan, and my mom was standing there over top of me, just holding me, begging God not to let me die.
So let me ask you, because I wanted to ask you about the Narcan. Who had Narcan you? Was that EMS?
It was EMS. Yeah.
So when you come to, because from the outside we hear all stories and experiences. You come to, is that the first time you've had Narcan administered?
I believe. I don't.
It's the first time you're aware that that's.
Yeah.
So you see your mom in some surreal moment. EMS is still on the scene. When people are still there. Is that the beginning of the bottom? Or is there a power moment because you survived it? Because we hear both.
Absolutely. Because I survived this one, I can do another one. You know what I'm saying? But in that overdose, my mom, when I wake up, or when I come to, all I see is her. My pants are cut off of me, or whatever, my shirt, the EMS thing. Hearing the sound of her voice begging God not to let me die was a point in my life that I'll take to my grave. I mentioned before that my mom was a drug addict, and she was a crackhead. But by the grace of God, she has 14 years sober. So, um, but that never really mattered to me. Like it never like, okay, so she done her thing, and because she done her thing, I want to do my thing. You know.
So it didn't scare you or deter you.
It did, but only for a moment.
Okay.
Like it was never like I was never bold enough to take that suicidal step.
Mm-hmm.
But if it came through overdose, that was my ticket. You know what I'm saying? But I could never get there. I probably could if I tried harder. But that was never the goal. You know what I'm saying? Was to overdose. Um,
But on some level, you were willing to accept that if it happened.
Absolutely. Because I'm still like. Let me say, like, I started using because of the depression and the anxiety and all these things I didn't want to deal with. But by that point in my addiction, it wasn't because of that anymore. Like I had started something that was way bigger than me, and under no circumstances was I able to ever stop it by myself. I couldn't, um, regardless if it was because of the sickness or the withdrawals or things like that comes with it. Like I wasn't ready to face that kind of giant alone.
How soon after that Narcan incident, when you come to and your mom's there, how soon do you use again that time?
The same day. Same day. Because you're familiar with how Narcan works. It reverses everything.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So now I'm pissed off.
Well, no, you're fine. You're fine.
Sorry.
And that's what I wondered, because I know that I hear that story from both sides of it. And I understand that sometimes the Narcan brings you into a moment of real anger because someone just took the buzz you bought.
Every bit of buzz that I had and trashed it.
Yeah, I understand that. I mean, we've heard that common theme.
Mm-hmm.
So you get high again the same day.
Same day. Like, I probably sign the refusal for the ambulance. Like, mom begging me to go home, and I was just like, I literally in everything that I just seen my mother doing over top of me. When I realized what was going on, I turned around and walked away from her, like begging and screaming and crying, just begging me to get in the car. It didn't matter.
How many more times were you Narcan?
Twice, and that was just like what I would call it, like a simple heroin overdose, and that's only because
that's a funny term.
Yeah, yeah. Well, simple overdose to me is just kind of like one who, let me say this: no one plans to overdose. Okay, but like someone who maybe hasn't done as much, and it only takes one Narcan to bring them up out of it.
Okay, so you'd call that a simple overdose.
Yeah, but only because it's revived quickly.
So 3 Narcans, because I want to remember that and come back to that in a little bit. But 3, we've invested 3 Narcans in you. Some people would say.
Yeah.
So, your cry mom doesn't break you, because it broke me a little bit. So we're gonna I got the mom button. We'll see if they edit those tears out. Maybe not. It doesn't break you because the addiction, the stronghold is still more.
Right.
Where do you start the spiral to your bottom? Where does it come? Or did it come in law enforcement?
At that point, like it was like I'm on my way down. You know what I'm saying? Like, but what I found was that my we like to say that our bottoms sometimes have basements. I mean, and this is where like I thought I was done. You know what I'm saying? But something snapped. Like something happened. Like a death of a friend. It could be a number of anything. You know what I'm saying? That would set like any kind of like thought process of trying to do better is snatched away. So I go out and I get more pain. I go out and I do more harms. I steal more stuff. I go to jail more times on probation violations or things like that.
So the rotation in and out of the system has already started on minor violations.
Oh yeah. The hospitals and rehabs and jails started at like the first one was like a the underage consumption at 17. But everything after that was hell on wheels.
So, the first rehab, how long are you there, and why doesn't it work?
Okay, well, I can't say anything against any other treatment program.
Well, let's not even talk about
Right.
where you were or anything, but why do you think rehab didn't work for you the first X number of times? Because I do hear people. So people tell us a lot. It's a personal match. You got to find the program that works for you.
Right.
But is it that you're not when you're a rehab flunky? Are you? Were you for you personally? Was it that you weren't ready?
Yeah,
That it wasn't the right match.
I think it's a combination of different things when it comes to that. The first program that I came to was a 30-day program.
Court ordered or free will?
Free will. And that made it harder because I didn't have to be there. Like, now you're going to tell me you're going to take my cell phone. You know, like, I can only have one phone call a day. I can't go outside. I can't have no cigarettes. What in the name of God are you doing to me?
And I did this to myself. And I checked myself in.
Yeah. So, and it was in an area where I have gotten high and lived lifestyles like that before. So it wouldn't have been hard just to walk out and not let my family know. You know what I'm saying?
So let's stop there, because in our community and in lots of communities, there's this ongoing conversation about we bring people into rehab facilities and they go through rehab and then they stay in our community. And so for you, we're celebrating that you're staying in our community. You're here making great impact, and we'll talk about that. But there's something to really be considered about the need to not be where it's familiar. And so you're saying you were where it was familiar and that was a barrier to good recovery. We criticize taking people out of their own community sometimes, but in reality, that's an important piece for a lot of people.
For me, had it been like, if I had the opportunity to get sober in Man, West Virginia, I don't think I could have done it. I have too many connections there, too many avenues and ways that I could get high if I wanted to. Too many co-signers that I could go out and get drunk for a weekend and nobody know. You know what I'm saying? So, for me, I had to be taken out of my comfort zone to where I knew absolutely nothing or no one. But not everybody's like that. Back to the short term treatment center. For me, I had to have structure. I had to have a plan of action that says, this is what we're going to do, and this is how we're going to do it. I was stubborn. I was set in my own ways. Because for so long, I think I mentioned earlier that I was homeless for 4 years-ish. Not because I didn't have nowhere to go, but because I couldn't let that lifestyle go. You know, like I was so stuck on the lifestyle because I knew that if I went home, the drugs couldn't go, and I wasn't ready for that yet.
So you became couch surfing homeless, basically.
Yeah.
Wherever you could land to continue to happen.
Yeah. And in that lifestyle, it's not. I'll never say it's comfortable, but for the addict who is still in active addiction, doing whatever it takes to get those drugs, wherever that takes you, is wherever you'll go. It's not always in the party scene.
Did it take you away from Logan? I mean, that
absolutely.
That moved you away.
Yeah.
Contact with your family during that time? Some, minimal, none?
Just enough to let them know that I was still alive. Like, I would go weeks without talking to my mom, and she'd call me and like, hey, at least send me some kind of text message that you're alive. I didn't care. Like, it was like, especially if I was in the middle of getting my dope. Or, you know what I'm saying, or like making a run to the liquor store. I didn't care. Like, I'll text you if I remember, whenever that is. So then it got to the point to where she would drive to the Charleston area looking for me. and it was causing a hassle on the West End because she knew that in a roundabout area, that's where I was, and she was going to find her boy.
She was shaking down West Side.
Here she come. You know what I'm saying? Like, so it got to the point where I was like, no matter what I looked like no matter how bad I looked or how skinny that I had gotten, like I had to make an appearance. So, why stupid? Because like I remember like putting layers of clothes on, and then with a jacket just so it looks like I've got some meat on my
So
bones.
your mom didn't know
Yeah, but
how bad it was.
I couldn't hide my face. You know what I'm saying? My face was sunk in.
Mama just knows.
And I'd get so mad at myself for failing every time. You know what I'm saying? Like she would bust me out every time on it. So
the small charges perpetuate themselves. You're homeless 4 years. At some point, you step up to a couple of felony possession charges.
yes. So on and off in this relationship that I started at 18 or 17, I went back thinking that I was going to be able to manipulate some more, and it works for a minute, but it got to the point to where like, if I don't make a move now, I'm going to get God again and end up with nothing. So we'll call them sane addicts, right? Like, would have done. I took everything that he had, and I took off. I would bounce from place to place on an app, through an app, and eventually I landed in Cherokee County, Georgia. To tell you how I got there, it's a blur. But I do know that when they picked me up, I was going through a backyard in a gated community. I had, like I said, I had the heroin and I had the meth on me, and I thought, I guess in my mind, that I was going to a party in the middle of the day. My phone was dead, so when I feel like maybe someone called on me because he rode up on me too quick. Like I didn't have time to get rid of anything. So it was just like, he asked me what I was doing, and I told him, but of course he didn't believe me. Like, but I remember him asking me, he's like, "Man, how long has it been since you ate?" The only reply that I could come up with was, "I don't remember." So, they test the drugs that I had, and it came back. And Cherokee, Georgia, they have their own set of rules down there. Like, it's a whole nother world. So I go down there, and then I catch these felonies, and I'm in jail for like 6 or 7 months down there. I finally see the judge, and instead of sending me to prison, he gives me 3 years on probation, and with stipulations of, like, if I get all these things done, like these felonies will be expunged off my record.
So a drug court system.
No. It was just simple probation.
Okay.
So they they actually bought me a bus ticket to send me back to West Virginia, and I was to report to my Logan County parole officer within 7 days. But I had 7 days on the bus the next day out of Georgia. I had 6 days to play with. So I started getting high again. That lifestyle led me right back to Charleston. Right. So because I wasn't allowed out of Logan County without permission or any of that, I went on another meth binge, and I thought in my mind I had convinced my probation officer that I was moving to this location in Charleston. He's like, "All right, he's like, "You been getting high?" I was like, "Well, I might have, because I knew he was going to scream me." And he's like, "Well, just go down there and report to the Charleston probation office, and you'll be fine." That wasn't it at all. His boss, that's where his office was, Um, he took me to jail for a 30-day shocker, and then he told me that that he hoped that I was done with the lifestyle because um, after I was released after my 30 days, I was going to Recovery Point, West Virginia. So,
Did you know anything about Recovery Point
no,
when they shipped you there?
no.
So you
I
arrived
was
used to being the savvy guy who can work his way through things.
to completely scared and broken.
So it takes some bounces.
Yeah.
So we started in the middle. We went all the way back to John very young. Let's go back to the middle and move forward. It's a struggle when you get there. It's a continual struggle. I mean, you shared that with us. I mean,
Absolutely.
you're out, you're back in,
Yeah.
you got a lot of restarts. We'll have to ask our friends over there, but you got to be high on the wall for a record number of detoxes. And I'm sure they're higher than your numbers, but that's a pretty good load. How many months sober today?
A little over 18 months.
So 18 months sober, how long out of Recovery Point as an actual client? How long since you're gelling out? I think if
Right.
I'm using.
I think I've right around 3 months,
Okay.
3.5 months.
Okay.
I
So
started off as a when I left, I was 3 months into the peer mentor supervisor.
okay.
So
So you came out that path.
yes. So and then I was actually going to sign another contract as supervisor, but BJ, or excuse me, our director, said no, I'm going to hire you. I thought, all right, I got to get my foot in the door somewhere. So
Day to day, when you're not doing podcasts,
Mhm.
because now you might be a podcast star.
I like it.
Tell me what that role looks like, because I want to go back to something you said earlier. What are you doing every day when you show up? What does that job entail?
Oh man, it's such a man. It's a lot more hands on with like it's a more personal level with the clients. I get to meet with 6 different clients a day out of each caseload that I share with my other recovery coaches there, and from being a monitor there, like I started off as a call in. And I've slowly but surely worked my way up to the position that I'm in now. And it's awesome, but like the relationship that I get to build with these guys today, and the experience that I get to share with them that that recovery is possible. In all those times that I wanted to give in, or prison would be simpler than this.
Because you could have worked the system in prison.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No problem.
Yeah.
What do you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're smooth.
Yeah.
Savvy.
So I get to work with these guys on a more personal level, and on days when and don't get me wrong, I learn so much more from those guys than I probably that they ever get from me.
But your growth will never stop. Recovery's not a journey that ends, and we have learned that. Yeah.
Right. If anything, I have to offer those guys is experience. We talked about that earlier. Experience. I mean, we can have all this big book knowledge, or knowledge of the 12 and 12, or how we perceive things, or our conception of things. But when it comes down to it, experience holds all. One of my biggest pet peeves is sitting across from a table with someone who has never been through the addiction, active addiction, or alcoholism, trying to tell me what they think that I should do. You're not going to hold any weight with me. But what I can do is I can relate to someone who's walked through some of the paths that I've walked through, who's had some of the same bottoms or experiences that I have. And it just keeps getting better every single day.
So, John, you're seeing 6 clients on average a day,
Mhm.
4 to 5 days a week.
5 days a week.
So 30 lives you're touching in a week. You're touching more because you're in the facility, but you're getting some time with 30 men every week.
So let me sometimes it's the same men.
Okay.
Like I have a caseload. Like every recovery coach there has a caseload.
Okay.
But sometimes like I'll dabble in the other guys.
Gotcha.
You know, see how they're doing. Or
have you made a difference there?
have
Don't be modest, because there's an end to my question. But has it made a difference getting to be a recovery coach? Do you have days where at the end of the day, are you going through the motions, or at the end of the day, did something you said, shared, opened up with, affect and change someone's life? And we won't play this recovery point, so let's just be.
no, it's okay.
How effective do you feel at the end of the day?
You know, sometimes I feel inadequate. Like sometimes, like I feel like nothing that I said got through to someone.
Do they come back?
Absolutely. Like
So something you said got through and is making a difference. And you're making a difference I couldn't make, because it's fascinated, and that seems like a silly word for it. But I shared that when your teams come in our building, we've been, probably the word is fascinated. I haven't walked that path. I've seen the path. I've battled my own vices and challenges, but I haven't walked that path. And so there are moments that it has truly fascinated me to hear your stories and understand beyond a funding check, beyond an application or a glossy brochure, to really hear the story that you at one point were an 8-year-old second grade boy in Logan, West Virginia, and this happened to you, and this may have been the first domino that, fascinating. But I go back to the moment where you were in the hot car in the middle of a field in Man, and someone chose to use Narcan. And so, and you and I both know it's a controversial conversation. And I understand, and I think I'm good at hearing all sides of it. But at the end of the day, if someone hadn't made the choice 3 times, where are we today? We're not here. And then I think about, where are the 20 to 30 lives that you're touching just between now and next Tuesday? We're not there. So what would you say to someone who says, we're just Narcanning the same people over and over and over again? What would you say to that? Because you took 3 Narcans.
Looking back on my life now, like, all the things that I've ever done in active addiction, and even some outside, like I'm not an angel. Like I've not always been the nicest person, not in addiction, But to look at my life today, and look at it, I don't know, 10 years ago, 8 years ago. If I had the opportunity to go back and do it all over again, I absolutely would. But because who I am today, every bit of my yesterdays, every bit of my Narcans, every overdose, every trip to the hospital, everything that I've ever done has made me into the person that I am today. And without being the person that I am today, I would never be able to help, or to help motivate, or give hope, or strength to people who doesn't realize that there's hope out there.
And recovery is possible.
And recovery is absolutely possible.
Is it hard for you, having walked that walk? I guess that's a rhetorical question. Of course, it's hard for you. What does it feel like when you hear people rise up with the Narcan argument and say, we're wasting our money?
You know what? It's frustrating. But being on both sides there at one time, right? Like, because you hear like people who's what most people may seem to exceed the limit. You know what I'm saying?
But what's the limit?
Right.
What's the limit on a human life of what's that investment threshold?
How do you?
I hear it, and I hear what they're saying, but what was your? How do we look at you at 26 and think what you still have left to give in our community and our world and in the recovery community, and say, yeah, you were a 3 Narcan, but you wouldn't have been a 6 Narcan. Like,
how do you price it?
How do we price your life for that?
I don't agree with that. Like I don't. Like if they wouldn't have done that, like I think like of course like no I'm not like this grand thing, you know what I'm saying, like but if I'm not here, who would have been? You know what I'm saying, with the help that I provided someone,
You might think you're not
would
the
they
grand
would they
thing,
have got it?
but to the person that you may lead
Sure.
to and through and sustain in recovery, you may be the grand thing
Right.
that keeps their mom from burying them.
Right. Well, my thing with it is like, if not me, someone else guaranteed. You know what I'm saying? Like, but would have someone been able to carry the message in the same way that I did, or interpret it something to them that maybe that helped them understand things better? You know.
It's the purpose of your life.
Right.
So, let's see who's in our podcast audience when this airs, and so who finds this controversial, but if we took you back to Logan, West Virginia and said, John, you have to go back there, so find a job, and we want you to go back where you came from, because thank you for visiting our community, but we need you to go back.
Yeah.
Scale of 1 to 10, how much more, your recovery is difficult every day, and will be every day the rest of your life, I know that. How much more or less difficult is recovery to go back to Logan, West Virginia right now, 18 months sober?
You know what? After being up here and going through the program that I did, it is a guarantee that if you express even a willingness to try to do better, excuse me, to want to change, excuse me, Jesus,
I'm literally giving you heartburn. Sorry.
no, it's I can guarantee you that by the time you finish a program, by the time or you work the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous or Narcotics Anonymous, whichever a fellowship you choose to work, I can guarantee you that if you work it honestly and thorough, you're going to have everything that you need to be able to be in that kind of position.
Okay.
That's going to be able to help you maintain and sustain in trying times. Because I know of Alcoholics Anonymous and Narcotics Anonymous, Gambling Anonymous, in a place like that, I'm going to seek out where those meetings are held.
Do you think there's kind of a threshold you need to pass through where you really get the feet under you of sobriety before you go back, or do you think that's very individual? Do you think some people could go back sooner?
Well, yeah. Each person's recovery is different.
Do you think some people just never can go back to?
Right. I know for myself right now, it is very important that I work with others and help others. And if I can do that there, then God knows I'm more than willing.
Okay.
However, for me and for my sobriety, for my well-being right now, it has to be short periods of time. Like I'm okay with going home and going to meetings, but to absolutely engulf myself there right now, I wouldn't. Our book talks about putting ourselves in positions to be hurt, but we find out that it was like troubles of our own making, like we done this. So, even though I'm confident in my recovery, and I'm confident in my ability to stay sober, because I have a sponsor, I work the steps, and I help others. But if there's ever a time that I need to go and spend some time there, would I, without hesitation? Absolutely.
But a bus ticket at graduation is maybe not in the best interest of everybody exiting a recovery program.
I would agree with you.
Okay. We love your story. What are family relationships like for you now in recovery?
Okay, so of course they're an active addiction. I've burnt every bridge. I've borrowed money, I've stolen money, I've done all these things. Mama's rings, bless her heart. You know what I'm saying? To the dope man. My aunts, my grandmas, my uncles, and things like that. But what Alcoholics Anonymous gives me access to was in when we made a list of all persons we'd harmed and became willing to make amends. Right. So that's just making a list, right? But the action comes into when we make direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others, right? So I can go through addiction all my life and tell you that I'm sorry for whatever I've done to you, over and over and over again, and like just because that 50th time telling you I'm sorry, it's not going to mean anything to you no more than the last one. So after having some clean time, after seeing the demeanor of, hey, like maybe he's ready. You know what I'm saying? Maybe it's time for him to change. Maybe he's getting on it. And all these things. Like my relationships didn't change all of a sudden. Like like the door was open for another bridge to be rebuilt, but it wasn't rebuilt overnight. But today. I go to family reunions or family functions, and my head's not at my ankles. You know what I'm saying? Like, or even I just show up. You know what I'm saying? And then family photos, things like that, family dinners that I always avoided because I knew that I was high, and if I knew it, you knew it. You know what I'm saying? So I could never stay aware of things like that. So, but today, like, I would say that I have a full-time family. You know what I'm saying? Like, who makes phone calls to their family every day? You know what I'm saying? Like, I get to do that today. Like, because I'm not running and gunning and worrying about things that I don't have to worry about anymore. Right.
So even 18 months in, lots of those healing moments have come. And bridges being rebuilt.
Don't get it misconstrued though. There are some relationships who is just like, just stay away from me. Like if you want things like to be cool between us, just stay away from me. Because so much harm and hurt has been done. And we can only pray that God will do a work there.
Or is that part of the acceptance you work on every day?
Oh man, it hurts. Because these are people that we love. Like, genuinely love. Like, this is family. These are friends that we've spent a life before addiction with, and that's probably some of the hardest things that an addict will go through, or a recovering addict will go through. Because the amends process has to be made to be able to somewhat rejoin life. And to hear those, like, just stay away from me, or just blah. You know what I'm saying? Like, that hurts. Because you have every intention on going and mending that, in that one conversation. And it doesn't happen.
Tell me this, and this is maybe my last question. As a community, and I don't necessarily mean it's not our United Way community, and I don't even know that I mean the Parkersburg community. As a community wrapped around someone in recovery, what can we do? Or what can we do better? And is it, I mean, for me, when you first came in, I said, before you really got on camera, I said, gosh, I want to make sure I use the right language so that I'm an advocate and an ally, and I'm not. But what can we do better as a community to support you? Because we're very good at pointing fingers and criticizing. Absolutely. We're very good at telling you when you're in active addiction what you need to do and what we shouldn't do and what we're not going to do anymore. We're pros at that. What do we need to do for the person that is in active recovery? I might have just made that word up too. I don't know if that's a real word, but
sounded good. I like it.
You can use that tomorrow.
Yeah.
What should we be doing? Because when you fail in your sobriety, it impacts all of us. And so I feel like as a community around you, we need to be engaged and involved and care about your long-term sustainable recovery. So what does that look like? What are we missing as a community?
Oh man, that's such a tough question.
You never don't have answers. You're so good with your answers.
A lot of people who come into recovery they have a criminal background, they have felonies, they have all these things that's working against them, and the only thing that's really fighting for their life in that moment is themselves. Um, so people like us who have done all these bad things in their life, um, if there was a place or opportunities for a lot of these men and women to have like as a source of income, like um, I'm a firm believer in having jobs and supporting yourself and rebuilding your life. I know that we have community resources here in Parkersburg who helps you get a job, um, but and I think that's a big part for us because like we in the times that we're in these treatment programs, um, we're working on ourselves. You know what I'm saying? Like we are um, redisciplined. We are dealing with new things in life are that we've never dealt with before, and that's the demons from our innermost selves. Um, so if I could ever um, if I could ever have one wish, it would absolutely to be jobs who only support active recovering drug addicts and alcoholics. Because for the most part, like you said, people are very critical and we are the group of people that's oftentimes pointed out and ridiculed and things because drugs and alcohol have such a stigma in our community and in this world right now. Um, but what's the plan of action after um, after completing treatment? You know, not everybody has a job waiting for them after they leave recovery or after they leave their program.
So many times the jobs, not to single out an individual industry, but so many times we drive, I fear, folks in recent sobriety into jobs that maybe are higher risk areas than others.
Absolutely.
We put them back into where accessibility is higher or where accountability is lower.
Mm-hmm. I'll never knock any business, okay? Because each and every one of us here have to have a source of income. But if we had an environment that was more heavily, I don't want to say surveillance because that sounds such like a jail word.
But you need accountability and
right.
You need flexibility. You need to be able to go to meetings. You need to be able. So what works for me in an 8-hour day might not exactly work for you in an 8-hour day. What we've seen just a glimmer of in the ambassadors program is so many folks with so many skill sets that we need in our community, but they're hindered by the need to check out from 12 to 12:30 for a meeting, and if that doesn't fit somebody's mold, then they're just not a candidate, or just not being a felon-friendly business, but not taking the extra step to look at what your felonies were, and realizing that that's probably not a particular threat to me in my business, and that's worth a gamble.
They see a sheet of paper that's sitting in front of them on their desk rather than seeing the individual for who they actually are. Like, who we are or who we were isn't who we are today.
Yeah.
You know, things happen and people do change.
Yeah.
Mindsets change. Ways of living change.
None of us want to be judged by our worst day or our worst choice. So being a better advocate. So what we have the ability to do is advocate for you, and what a community can do is education.
Yeah.
Is willingness to be educated, willingness to hear. I don't think we're doing the best that we could do as communities, and I don't mean our immediate.
Sure.
We're not doing the best that we could do, and we say consistently, it's not a crisis that's going away.
Absolutely not.
As a recovery coach, you're not going to be hurting for business, I'm afraid, for a very long time. So, as sad as that makes me, it's the acceptance that we need to say this is a part of our workforce. This is a segment of our workforce that we have to learn to accommodate and grab the best of, and make.
I wished that. I mean, like, don't get me wrong. I love my work. I love everything that I wake up and get to do. You know, but of course, it's always a dream that one day that recovery coaches will not be needed.
But we always hope that nonprofits just get put out of business and that nobody needs us. But we're far from it right now. But it's a pipe dream to be unemployed as a nonprofit leader. So, John, thank you so much for just coming in and just being honest and just being you. I don't know if it's harder for me to ask the questions for you to be honest or for you to be honest. I feel like the burden might have been on me today because it's been one of the most inspiring things about working with Recovery Point here in Parkersburg is your ability to just come in and tell it, what do you call it, your lead. Is that right?
It's like a short mini lead, yeah.
It's amazing to hear you tell it with such humility and just genuine, authentic willingness to share. I know that might help someone else, so I appreciate that.
Thank you for having me. Like when I first came in, I was nervous. That's could be.
Well, we had this crazy, we're 6 foot distance in our podcast, and but thank you. We're growing this podcast, and our hope for it really in the beginning was to create a platform to look at all of the agencies and critical services that we're connected to in the community, and make sure that we're telling that story well. So, you did a really amazing and humbling job for me.